Imagine being able to observe the future of humanity, not by watching people, but by watching mice. It sounds unsettling, yet this is exactly what scientist John B. Calhoun set out to do. He created a perfect world for them, an utopia without hunger, without danger, without limits. But his experiment was never really about the mice. It was about us. Every movement they made, every breakdown they suffered, every collapse of their tiny society was a distorted mirror of what could happen to our own. Before we proceed, if you really feel it, please subscribe, leave a like, and comment. Calhoun knew this. That's why he built an artificial paradise: endless food, constant water, perfect temperature, no predators, no threats, a world where survival was guaranteed and where, in theory, the community should have thrived. But he wasn't interested in watching them live peacefully. He wanted to understand what remains of a social creature when everything is provided, yet the connections that hold them together begin to disappear. At first, everything seemed flawless. The colony grew, expanded, organized itself. But as the space filled up, something began to fracture beneath the surface. Interactions became forced, constant, impossible to escape. The mice could no longer choose who to be around or retreat when overwhelmed. Utopia tightened around them like an invisible cage. Behavior began to distort. Sudden aggression, anxiety, apathy. Mothers abandoned their young. Dominant males collapsed under social pressure. It was as if their minds no longer had room to breathe. Then they appeared, the beautiful ones. Mice with perfect fur, untouched by scars, polished as if the real world had never reached them. But inside, they were empty. They didn't mate, didn't fight, didn't communicate. They stopped engaging with the colony entirely. They were alive, but had ceased to live. They spent their days eating and grooming themselves, repeating the same meaningless rituals, a generation stripped of identity, purpose, or social function. From that moment on, the decline was inevitable. Violence increased, parental care vanished, social bonds dissolved into chaos, isolation, and mental breakdown. And so, despite abundance, despite perfection, the entire colony died. Calhoun gave this phenomenon a name: the behavioral sink, the point at which behavior collapses, and with it, the entire structure of society. And here lies the most disturbing truth. This experiment is not a story about mice. It is a message for humanity, for our overcrowded cities, our digital lives, our increasingly fragile relationships. It warns us that a society can crumble even when it has everything, if it loses the connections that make it human. The question that remains hanging in the air is simple and terrifying. How long before our own utopia begins to crack the same way?